Alright, good evening folks, it's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to another short war video, and today we have very big news coming out of Europe, Ukraine, and Russia, and let's jump right into it. This morning, Russian officials are struggling to repair the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, as it's now been disconnected from the grid for over 4 days, as experts warn of a possible nuclear meltdown. We've also gotten word that a Russian submarine has suddenly surfaced near Spain, and begun a distress signal after a severe accident while at sea, and the details remain a little bit unclear at the moment. We also have news of even more drone sightings over Denmark, and news that Estonian authorities have recovered Russian drone debris on their coast as the attacks have become more widespread, and we also have news of an extremely close call with a passenger jet and an unknown drone, which narrowly missed a commercial airliner by 50 meters in Amsterdam. So very big news today on many different fronts, and let's jump right into our first article, which goes to us on Twitter at It's the Enforcer. And right now I would say this is our biggest story of the day. We are getting word that Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is currently under Russian occupation, has been disconnected from the power grid for over 4 days, which is obviously a very big deal, and the plant has been operating on emergency generators as nuclear experts are warning that a possible meltdown might occur if the fuel is unable to be cooled properly. So right now, this is a very precarious situation right now at the Zaporizhzhia plant. Now, of course, these reactors are actually deactivated right now. The Russians are rumored to be turning one of these back on, but right now that's simply a rumor. But the big deal is these facilities still need to be cooled in order to keep this fuel from melting down. So they still need the power here at this plant, but right now there's apparently a disconnection from the power grid, which causes this place to be run on emergency generators in the short term. So the Russians right now are in a very precarious spot in operating this plant, and like the Ukrainians have been saying for some time, the Russians are truly mismanaging it, and now it's getting to a crisis point today that we're hearing about in this story. But giving you some more details though, apparently the plant has an estimated of 20 days of generator fuel to operate the cooling systems, but once the gasoline runs out, the clock starts on a potential nuclear meltdown, which could take place in mere weeks. So obviously it goes without saying, this is a massive deal right here. This is turning into a true nuclear crisis, and if you want all the details about this in their entirety, the post here was made by The Guardian, and you can go see that on our Twitter page and go see the entire article. But I'm no mathematician, but if they have 20 days of emergency generator fuel available at this facility, and currently it's been 4 days already, that means they only have about 16 days of emergency fuel left before the Russians cause a potential nuclear incident at this plant. So very severe, and the clock is currently ticking down to a possible nuclear incident right now at this plant. So what the Russians need to do is they either need to get this plant reconnected to the power grid, which I believe they're trying to do that right now, or they need to truck in more emergency fuel for the generators to keep those running so that way this plant can be cooled down. So very precarious indeed, and we're waiting on more details about that story. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Alexandria C4. And if you thought that was a big story about the nuclear power plant, we also have another big story right here about a Russian submarine having a distress call sent out near Spain. And we are hearing that a Russian Kilo-class submarine, the Novorossiysk, has apparently suffered an accident in the Mediterranean Sea, and fuel is now leaking directly into the hold of the submarine due to a damaged fuel system. Right here in the picture, you can see there is the Novorossiysk apparently surfaced near the coast of Spain in the Strait of Gibraltar. So you can see there it is right here. It's obviously right there in the middle of the Strait of Gibraltar, so I'm sure they weren't expecting to surface in that area, but now the Spanish are out here monitoring it now they've seen it in their area. Going down right here, you can see there it is surfaced once again in the Strait of Gibraltar, a more blurry photo, but nonetheless you can see it in the distance. And also we have one more right here. We see that a Russian Navy tug has arrived on the scene, as you can see right here in this picture, and we also have one more post here showing the Spanish Air Force is currently monitoring the situation with one of their surveillance aircraft. So they are out here and they're looking at this thing in the Strait of Gibraltar right now, and we're not exactly told how severe this accident is, but obviously fuel leaking into the hold of the submarine, that would be quite bad. So we do see that happening, and right now waiting to see how this is going to unfold right now with one of Russia's top submarines currently surfaced and signaling a distress call. So very big news. But moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to Fintux News, and we've also gotten more word about drone sightings over NATO territory, and today we are hearing that drones were observed over multiple military locations in Denmark last night yet again, according to Danish armed forces, and they say this includes the Karup Air Base, which is Denmark's largest military workplace, and the base houses all of the country's military helicopters. So we are seeing yet even more drone sightings today, folks. This is literally a day in and day out crisis right now that NATO is really not responding to very well, in my personal opinion. So they're now over another air base, which is obviously a military facility, and they house the country's military helicopters there. there. So whoever's launching these drones, if they wanted to, they could launch an attack if they chose to do so, and that's how unprotected the airspace currently is over Denmark right now. So a very precarious situation with that as well. But we have yet even more information here about the drone debris washing up on the shore of a NATO country, and this one goes to Global Military Info. Because we have heard that Estonian authorities have reportedly discovered a suspected large Russian drone in a nature reserve on the nation's western coast, and that this discovery underscores a rising pattern of drone activity across NATO territory. So the gentlemen here were apparently out here getting the drone out of the water, and we did not get an exact picture of the drone being retrieved. I'm not sure why that is, but we don't have that. But the Estonians have found a alleged Russian drone on their coast, which makes you wonder, is this one of these drones that have been flying over other NATO territories? Because Estonia happens to be right there where the water meets these other countries that are currently having these drone sightings. So moving into our next post here, we can see the exact location in which this drone was recovered on the coast of Estonia, and it's actually right here near Lutama, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but y'all can see the spelling of it right here on the screen, and there it is right there on the map highlighted in red. So as we can see, that is the location right there on the map, but also what's interesting about that location, if you look at that on Google Maps, and I'm going to go ahead and jump to the Google map right here about it, there is Estonia, and in red where that red marker is, you can see there is the area in which that drone was recovered. Look at the location here. There is Stockholm right over there across the Baltic Sea, and there's the location where this thing was found over in Estonia. So it seems like the proximity to this recovery right here seems to be rather close to where these drones are being spotted over Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, and other countries surrounding the area. So seems to me like this could be a drone which maybe washed ashore from crashing in the Baltic Sea that could have been doing these reconnaissance missions over NATO countries. But right now we simply don't know. We're waiting for more details about it, and also waiting on details from the Estonians about what the drone even looked like that they recovered off their coast. But with that, folks, we're moving into our next article here, and this one goes to Visegrad 24. And speaking of more drone sightings, we have heard of even more drone sightings. This time they're happening over Norway. Several unknown drones were spotted over Orland Air Base in Norway, and it's NATO's main air base in Norway and also home to the country's F-35 fighter jets. So you can see there's Norway, and there's the location of Orland. It's on the the western side of Norway, up toward the north. So this is the location in which these new drone incursions have occurred. You know, it's happening all over the country of Norway. It's happening all over Sweden, and these are a lot more widespread than we're even being told about. And I'll get into that in just a minute, because it turns out NATO's been trying to play down the severity of these drone attacks that we're now hearing about today. So with that, we are now jumping into our next article here, which goes to Fightux Network. Also, by the way, a huge shout out to Fightux Network, by the way. They do excellent reporting over there, and I recommend you go check them out on their Twitter page. But also, they have a scoop for us. They said a source within Norway's police security service allegedly tells Fightux Network that drone incursions into Norway are far more frequent than what has been publicly reported. So that would lend credibility to the speculation I was making last night that NATO is trying to play this whole situation down and also buy themselves some time to figure out how they're going to respond to this. And it seems to be that is likely the case that we're hearing about today from this source. So I personally believe that NATO knows exactly where these drones are coming from, and they're trying to cover that up to buy themselves some time to figure out how to respond to it. That is currently my speculation. Let us know down in the comments below what you think about that whole situation. But moving into our next post here, this one goes to Alexandria C4, and we've also gotten another bombshell piece of news today that these drones are interfering with commercial airliners trying to land at airports inside of NATO countries. We are hearing right now that a drone came within 50 meters of colliding with a Transavia passenger jet that was about to land at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam just a few hours ago. So that is a bombshell news right there. We are hearing that according to our sources right now, allegedly a drone came within 50 meters of colliding with a passenger jet in Amsterdam. So if this turns out to be true and we get more confirmation of it, this right here is extremely damning news for NATO that they are not taking action against these drones that are now endangering apparently the lives of people on passenger jets inside of NATO countries. So whatever the case is, NATO needs to tend to this quickly, because we can't sit back and allow these drones to keep invading NATO airspace and potentially endanger the lives of innocent civilians simply because NATO is not willing to act. That, in my opinion, is a dereliction of duty, and NATO needs to get on this quickly, because if they know where these drones are coming from, then they have the ability to take action against the launch source, and hopefully NATO's not going to wait until people get hurt to actually fix this problem. So that's what we're hearing today. So a very big report indeed, and that happened just a short while ago before I started recording the video. But jumping into our next post here, this one goes to Anton Gerashenko. And we are hearing even more BS from the Russian Federation today, because Lavrov, Lavrov, the horse-faced ambassador from Russia, is saying today in a public forum that Russia is being accused of almost planning to attack the NATO alliance and European Union countries, and President Putin has repeatedly debunked these provocations, and Russia has never had and does not have any such intentions. However, any aggression against my country will be met with a decisive response. And also, Anton points out that he doesn't need to remind everybody how vehemently Russia denied its plans to invade Ukraine before it literally invaded Ukraine in a full-scale war. So Lavrov is out here spewing lies again. Yet again, he's spewing lies, and that's not shocking whatsoever because Putin has been making all kinds of war threats against the West. Russian officials have also made a slew of war threats themselves against the West. So to say that Russia is just a peaceful angel, like he's trying to suggest, that is insane right there. So moving into our next post here, this one goes to WorldSource News 24/7. And also moving on to a different piece of news here, we are also hearing from Ukrainian monitoring channels associated with the armed forces of Ukraine. They claim that the Russian armed forces have completed reconnaissance activities of targets in western Ukraine, and they're expecting a massive attack in the coming days. So the Russians, who are peace first and attack second, allegedly, it turns out they're actually wanting to attack the hell out of Ukraine, and it turns out they're probably going to launch a massive attack in the coming days on western Ukraine. So that's disturbing to hear as well. And also, we're getting word that the Russians are planning some type of offensive, and currently we're waiting on more details about that before we report on the details of it. But Russia is certainly ramping up and not ramping down, as we're seeing here today. But jumping into our next post, this one goes to Max25. Also, the gas crisis inside of Russia is still ramping up today. We're getting even more images showing lines at gas stations in Crimea, and right here you can see there are the lines, a whole bunch of people waiting to get into a gas station right there in that image. And you can also see they're out of certain octanes yet again at this gas station, and we're also seeing another image here showing more octanes out of action at even more gas stations inside of Crimea. So it looks like the gas crisis is not getting any better, and there's no hope in hell that the Russians are going to be able to reverse that. So we're seeing that today. And you might think, why or how's it got to this point so far? We do have a map today, thanks to Max25 and also Radio Liberty, showing exactly where all these fires have occurred at Russian refineries and gas infrastructure facilities throughout 2025, and it is a lot of them. So let's take a look. And taking a look right here at the map, you can see that more than 90 attacks have been confirmed so far this year, reported by authorities and local sources, and most of them are linked to Ukrainian drone and missile strikes. So right here you can see it looks like the majority of the attacks on these oil refineries and facilities are generally located in the western part of Russia, more toward the European side, and there's also been fires at least at 3 other sites in the far eastern part of Russia, but those are a little bit more sparse. But there's been literally so many attacks. You can see the map here is just full of dots showing where all these attacks have occurred. It is widespread, and this is what's led right now to this point where Russia is in a gas crisis the way they are right now, is because of these widespread attacks. So Russia having a massive problem, and I don't see any end in sight yet again today. And so far, Putin has been very silent about the gas crisis. He has not made any public statements about it that I've heard, and it looks like they have no solution in mind. But with that, folks, that is actually our last post of the video. So if you found the video informative, go smack the like button and also subscribe to the channel as well if you already haven't for more daily real-time updates just like this one. And also, by the way, folks, if you want to support our work, you can do so on a Patreon, and the link is in the description below to Patreon. So you can go over there and sign up for a monthly membership if you choose to do so to help keep the channel running. And it could be as little as $5 a month or maybe even $10 a month. Any amount helps the channel tremendously and helps to keep us on the air. And we do sincerely appreciate all of our Patreon supporters. But in the meantime, though, we're going to keep monitoring the breaking news today, and we're going to have a lot of news for the stream tonight. So be sure to join us again at 10 p.m. Eastern for our nightly war news stream. And with that, bye-bye for now.